Hi, I'm AJ Harper, and you're listening to A Shark's Perspective.
Welcome back, and thank you for joining A Shark's Perspective. I am Kenneth Kinney, but friends call me Shark. I'm a keynote speaker, strategist, a shark diver, host of this show, and your chief shark officer. So you want to write a book. It's a lot easier to get one published today, but regardless of how it's published, there are a lot of bad books out there, and like a lot of business cards, they get thrown away because they weren't worth reading. How do you write a must-read book that moves the needle, not only for the reader, but also for you? AJ Harper is an editor and publishing strategist who helps authors write foundational books. A writing partner to business author Mike Michalowicz, a ghostwriter who has worked with newbies to New York Times bestselling authors with millions of books sold, the head writing coach for heroic public speaking, and the author of Write a Must Read, Craft a Book That Changes Lives, including your own. And on this episode, we'll discuss how to write a must-read book, mastering various writing formats, being a ghostwriter to emerging from behind the curtain as an author, a reader-first philosophy, books as business cards, keeping up with publishing standards in a self-publishing world, articulating your core message, editing, listening to your inner trolls, a nice ghost shark, Ghostbuster biographies, other Harper authors, Neil Simon, Les Brown, Brené Brown, and a lot more. So let's tune in to AJ the Writer with KK the Shark on this episode of A Shark's Perspective. AJ, welcome to A Shark's Perspective. If you would, please give us a little background on your career to date.
Sure. So I am currently a publishing strategist and a developmental editor, and I teach twice a year a book workshop for authors who want to write a must-read book. And before that, I was a ghostwriter for 10 years, specifically for prescriptive nonfiction. So books that make things better, like your business, your marriage, your body, your spirituality, whatever, your relationships. And I also am known for working with Mike Michalowicz, who's together we've written 9 books so far. We're on number 10 this summer, who is my writing partner on all of those business books. And I'm also head writing coach for Heroic Public Speaking, which is founded by Michael and Amy Port.
So I first knew of you through Mike and his books, but then I learned about you through Heroic Public Speaking. And I think, unfortunately, AJ, you need to start working with some people that people have heard of, because, I mean, after all, you've also worked with these characters like Les Brown and Mark Victor Hansen and Brenda Burchard. I mean, these are some pretty impressive names that you've worked with in your career.
Well, it's true. So, to keep that in perspective, I was a cog in the machine. It's not that I have a relationship with, I have probably more time with Les, but when you're part of that whole machine, I'm the editor working on stuff. Yes, there's cachet to working with those people, and I did those things, but a lot of people I worked with, I can't tell you about or name because of Fort Knox. But as an editor, I did work with a lot of notable thought leaders. That's true.
Well, I worked with a lot of Fortune 200, and I'm taking credit for all of their success. So it's pretty much the same to being a cog in that wheel. So you wrote plays also. I know you've scribed speeches and you've ghostwritten books, and now you're an author on your own. As an author, what is your favorite format and why? And you're not allowed to throw in haiku or any poetry, but as far as plays and the way we do storytelling with plays and theater and books and speeches, what's your favorite format?
Oh gosh, you're really putting me on the spot. I love so many different formats. I love mastering the different formats. I really think I'm just a sucker for fiction, though. I love a novel. I love to just get wrapped up in it. And it's so funny you mentioned I'm an author too. I didn't even say that when I introduced myself. This is because I've been behind the curtain for 17 years and I'm still getting used to having my own book.
So the business card, the way you refer to it in the intro, you talk about writing exclusively for these different authors and this development stuff. And you reference this as a better business card racket that dominated the industry at the time, and it still does. And it created a drive-through mentality about books. I've got to quote this. You said, I imagine wannabe authors driving up to the menu at Books to Go and ordering their debut. I'll take a 250-page business book, Tony Robbins style, with a side of Brene Brown. Hold the action steps and can you super speed that? I need it in 7 minutes, not 10. I love that whole excerpt. But you say that a book is not a business card and people throw away business cards away. And that's so true. I know there's a lot of bad authors as well, but because of retailers like Amazon, the gates and the walls are down now. And that gives people more possibilities and opportunities to get a book published quickly, just get a book published in general. That does add to the stack of chocolate ice cream cone books out there. I'll put it that way. But I have a friend who's written 9 books, 9. That's a fairly impressive number considering the undertaking it takes to not only write a book, but to balance it with other work stuff and the promotional aspects. And you know what? No one's ever heard of him. And to your point about writing a better book, how does someone properly approach this so their effort writing a book or their end result isn't just something that gets thrown in the trash like a business card?
Well, thanks for bringing that up because I am on a mission to get better books in the world. And I think the first step is to just decide I'm not going to do that other way. And because the gatekeepers came down, it became less expensive and easier to self-publish and hybrid publish. It's like we just tossed out all the traditional publishing standards, and that's not a good idea. So I think just if I could just inspire people, okay, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to actually write the best book I can. And not everybody can write a classic, but I actually think you can write a must-read book, even if you don't think you can and haven't had experience writing a book. If you just make a simple shift to focusing on your reader and not just at the ideation phase, this is the key distinction, but the whole way through. So every page is focused on reader experience and delivering on a promise to them. And when you do that, you up-level any book you were going to write, whatever the length, whatever the topic. But first you have to decide, I want to do that. So that's the first part.
First step is admitting you got a problem. So
yes.
What were your goals in writing the book? Because now that you're not ghostwriting as much and that you're, out in front of the curtain, everybody's going to come to you and say, will you help me ghostwrite this book now?
Well, I've been out of the ghostwriting. I mean, I do continue to have a partner in Michalowicz because I love him and because we have a great creative relationship that is fun for me, right? I'm invested in it. But I haven't been a ghostwriter for about 5 years now. I just burned out. So people know, they still sometimes ask me if, I'll get a few inquiries now 5 years later. I have great ghostwriters on my contact list and I send them forward. I love teaching authors how to do this because once I figured out how to take what I did, my methods, and transfer them to people in a way that would actually work, that just became my obsession. Just making people aware of, ideas, mindsets, and frameworks and tools that could help cut through all that confusion about how do I write a great book. And since it's working for my students, I made the book because I just wanted it to be available to as many people as possible who maybe couldn't afford my class.
Have you ever written a book or ghostwritten a book that you found was killer that didn't cut through the promotional noise? Because obviously the way we push and promote and publish books is so much different than it was a decade ago or even more.
Yeah, for sure. Too many to count, actually. And the thing is, you need that must-read book to really catapult yourself to the kind of sales most people want and the experience most people want, simply because if a book is a must read, people tell other people about it. It's really honestly that simple. But there is the component of the author really needs to be all in on getting the word out.
So let's say you've got great content. Would you write a book differently stylistically today than you would have a decade or a decade plus ago? After all, I mean, that's a blip in time, but social media didn't exist when, Tolstoy or Hemingway or any of those were trying to push out books. Would the AJ of today write the same Mike Michalowicz Profit First in the same style with Mike as you would have today versus not that long ago, but it's continuing to change.
Yeah, the answer is no, because I don't focus on that. I focus on who is the reader, what do they want, what's standing in their way. And in Mike's case, what does Mike know that can get them what they want? And then we just focus on delivering on that promise by the end of the book. That's it. We don't worry about what everyone else is doing.
Perfect. So let's dive in a little bit on those subjects. You write about connecting with the ideal reader and how classics are reader driven. Elaborate a little bit further on that for people who are approaching a book right now.
So I'm one of many people who says focus on your ideal reader. I think the challenge is people don't really know how to do that and how to make
the same thing happens in marketing. We talk about serving people.
Yeah.
Speakers talk about serving audiences or serving the people in the audience, and still it becomes about them, unfortunately, more than it does about the audience sometimes. So I love the conversation.
Yeah. So, I shorten that to reader first, which is a philosophy, but it's also a craft. And it's first getting to know them, but not like a marketing avatar. It's really honestly hearts and minds. So it could be different demographics of people. It could be, circus performers and soccer moms and CEOs. But if they have the same thing they want and the same perceived problem, getting it, then they're still your demographic. It's more about what's inside than what's outside. Sometimes the conditions in which people live really do matter and shape the book. But very often it's more about, I want this thing, I can't get this thing, and how can I get this thing? And so understanding that on a really deep level, how do they talk about it? What do they think about it? What do they feel about it? What are their worries and concerns? Basically the psychographics, which I'm sure you talk about, is where you need to start, and then crafting everything based on that the whole way through.
And I enjoyed the section on crafting. And I'm curious, how should we approach going about crafting our game-changing core message? Because I think for me, when I was thinking through this, and I've heard conversations with other people, it's very interesting to watch people who maybe find a way to articulate that message, but then it turns out it's a little bit of a different message and it changes their core.
Yeah, it's hard. So first, let me just manage expectations for anyone listening. It's not easy. We have a tendency to lean into an elevator pitch or trying to sound sexy with a tagline or a promise. That's one of the most common I get is, this is what I'm promising. It's not actually any of those things. It's the foundational truth on which your whole book is built. And so it's not everything you want to say. It's that thing that hinges, right? So you got to get this so you can get all the rest. And I take it to the next level. I really push people to make sure that message is transformational on its own. That's the key. So if I say my core message for my book is, a book is not about something, a book is for someone. You don't even have to read my book. If you can just shift your mindset from thinking about what's my book about and start thinking, who's my book for? And letting that guide you every step of the way, your book will automatically be better. Or in Mike's book, Profit First, it's traditional accounting methods are killing your business. Take your profit first. If you don't read the book, you can still start taking your profit first and make a change. So that's the distinction. Can a person actually start to make a change just from hearing that? And it actually works like magic, because people, when I get my students to start sharing that publicly while they're writing the book, it is amazing the doors that open for them. And yes, it does shape the book, but it also allows you to speak with confidence about what you're writing, which is a huge factor in actually getting the book finished.
So you talk about committing to the promise, and I love that you talk about making certain that people commit to a promise that they can deliver. And I thought that message tied back nicely to a later part of the book as well, where you mentioned making sure your book actually works. Mm-hmm. Define what you think an author's promise should be to their audience.
So it goes back to understanding your ideal reader and what they want. So how much of that can you actually deliver? So it has to be a promise that is in alignment with them, so they actually want the promise. So that's number one. And number two is, can you actually deliver it within the confines of the book, not someday? So we make these pie in the sky promises. And I think it's because we just don't know better, or because we're not that confident about, market, let me make this big promise. Or sometimes it's just because we want to promise it. It sounds, we want that for folks. It just comes from pure altruism. But the thing is, if you can get a person if you can move the needle for a person by the time they close the book, and that includes their participation. So they have to read it. If you have exercises, they have to do them. If they have action steps, they have to do them. But let's say they comply, then there should be a change by the time they actually close it. And so there's two pieces to that. It challenges you to think, how could I deliver on the promise I want to deliver? And that automatically up levels your content, because now you're thinking, oh, I have to do it. So what else could I put in this book to make sure? And then the second part is, it also causes you to be reflective and say, maybe I need to take it down to something that I actually can say definitively I can do.
So let's talk about filters. What are the 3 questions that we should use to filter our content?
Great question. So we've already talked about the 3, foundational elements of writing a must read, which is ideal reader, transformational core message, and a promise you can deliver. So then it's easy. It's just, consider content. Say you have a story you want to include. You can ask yourself the 3 questions. Will this help me connect to my ideal reader? Will it help me support my core message? So prove it, show it's true, right? Help people understand it. And will it help me deliver on the promise? And if you can just get one yes, then it probably goes in the book, or at least you get a maybe. And if you can't get one yes, then it goes somewhere else.
So trolls, later in the draft section, you talk about killing your inner trolls, which is something I'm working through right now on my own book. How do we go about doing that if these trolls also help us write a better book? I mean, after all, you say the reader first is a troll killer.
Yeah.
You get to the point where you're either listening too much or too little to your inner voice and your inner troll.
Well, I mean, the trolls are, we usually think of inner critic as being super nasty. And it's actually, we have dark days. We might believe the things that nasty troll says, but actually, it's easier to manage that enemy. It's more of a known enemy. The real problem are the sneaky trolls that I call the reasonable shoulder trolls. They're just pleasant, and they just have a nice voice and whisper in your ear about all these really practical, reasonable reasons that you shouldn't work on your book. So they say things like, gosh, you haven't been to the gym in a while, or you really need to do more billable hours, or God, you should probably think about this longer. You should probably take some time to just ponder this, or they say things like, wow, there's 2 books on your topic already. Maybe you should just pull the plug on this one and write something else. And it's nice. They're nice. And you say, yeah, maybe I should. But that's actually a troll too. They're the ones that kill all the books.
So I'm curious, you have a great chapter in there later about editing.
Yeah.
As somebody that's written, several in that section, how does somebody like you go about approaching editing with your own book as opposed to all those you work with others on?
I follow the same methodology I teach, which is honestly,
it's hard to put yourself in the catbird seat though with that.
No, I love editing. Editing is so much fun. It's my favorite. I would rather edit than write a first draft any day. And I love to be edited, because I've been edited by all sorts of editors at all sorts of publishing houses, and it's fun. I enjoy the process, because when I was a playwright, I had to deal with intense criticism, and it just made me very just stoic about it. So now I just treat it as information, and I either find that information useful or I don't, but I don't take it personally.
So who are the nonfiction authors, not named Michalowicz, for example, that you read and enjoy?
Aside from my students, which I would sit here because I love them so much, I would just plug their books all day. I'm a big fan of Stephen Pressfield, which you can tell from reading my book. I promise I'm not a stalker.
You
When
did stalk
he
him at an event in Nashville. I read that.
No, I went to the event in Nashville and paid good money to go to that event
True,
in
true,
Nashville.
true.
And in fact, barely even spoke to him, but he did endorse my book, which he almost never does. And that was a day where I ended up crying in the Lowe's parking lot because when I was waiting for a microwave um, to the curbside, for them to put it in my car. And I got the email with the endorsement, and I just started crying. And the poor little young teenager who was put in the microwave was like, "Oh, ma'am, are you okay?" I said, "It's good. I promise it's good. I'm
Oh my
fine."
gosh.
But Stephen Pressfield for sure. If you talking about books on writing, I mean, you have to read Anne Lamott's Bird by Bird, but there's a lot of newer authors writing really great stuff, and on writing for sure. But just in general nonfiction, I'm more of a fan of reading just random stuff. I think as a creator, you have to read stuff that's outside of what everyone else in your world is reading. So random history things or stuff about sociological, this or that. So I'll just pick things that I don't know anything about, just so I'm getting my juices flowing.
If you had to guess an average, what's the average length of a book that you would write or co-write?
Oh, I don't even know. I mean, back when Mike got his deal for Pumpkin Plan, our minimum word count for delivery was 85,000. And that, and sometimes it's 50, sometimes it's 60. I think right now we're at 60, 75. I never know what it's going to be. I think the more important thing is, like I said, to just don't worry about it so much. Just try to deliver on the promise. And then if the book turns out to be 30,000 words and you did that, totally cool.
Well, AJ, I asked this of all my guests, and so I got to ask you, what is your favorite kind of shark and why?
I don't have a favorite. How about what kind of shark doesn't eat you?
How about the Australian for you? This one's just for you, the Australian ghost shark, which is
Okay.
also known as the elephant shark, and it's a very friendly shark.
Oh, I've seen pictures of that. Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna go with that one.
That would work. So I had one of them ready for you. So it's better than anything you'd find in the New York area anyway. Well, AJ, it's a special time of the show. Are you ready for the 5 most interesting and important questions that you're going to be asked today?
I'm excited.
All right. You've authored many styles, and you remind us that this book is not for someone writing a book that is fiction, but let's play a fictional game. We're going to do plays and books. Okay. Barefoot in the Park by Neil Simon or To Kill a Mockingbird by AJ Harper. Or sorry, by Harper Lee.
Close, Harper Lee. Right?
Well, there is a Harper in it. So
yes. I know it's a classic and I should say that, but I have to say Barefoot in the Park.
Okay, fair enough. Harper Lee was one of my favorite authors.
This is a very difficult choice you're giving me, but Barefoot in the Park is the reason I started writing plays. So I'm emotionally attached.
All right. So number 2, would you write a near perfect book or several books that are a rung below, but that are really, really good?
Oh,
let's talk about your legacy.
Oh, gosh, I think if I could help more people with the really good books, then I would do the really good books because it's really about the ripple effect of change. So I'd have to go with that one.
Good way of describing it. All right. So you've been a ghostwriter, and we're going to talk about Ghostbusters. This is an obvious,
okay, awesome.
An obvious transition. Yay. If you were writing a book about any of the Ghostbusters, then who would you want to write about? Which book? Would it be the book for Dan Aykroyd or the book for Bill Murray?
Oh, Dan Aykroyd for sure.
Why so?
The Bill Murray character is so wild, and I'm afraid of opening that Pandora's box. I'm a little nervous about that one.
Yeah. Great. Yeah. Great. All right. Number 4, if the quality is exactly the same, the content is great, self-publish or traditional publisher?
Oh, that's totally based on an author's priorities. So that would be about another 10 minutes of conversation, but ultimately it's what are the outcomes you're looking for, but also what are your resources in terms of time and money? And then also how much control do you want to have? So you have to consider these factors. Credibility is another factor, and distribution.
You've made that more complex than my small brain anticipated.
It's so complex, so it's hard to answer. But I think the main thing is, don't decide. It's not black or white. It's think about what matters to you and then make an informed decision.
Okay. Number 5. And I don't think this one will be quite as complex.
Okay.
The most important question that you're going to be asked today is biscuits or cornbread?
Biscuits. I do love cornbread, but biscuits.
Okay.
You're just asking the heavy hitter question.
Absolutely. You can't self-publish a biscuit. I mean, so AJ, where can people find out more about you, get a copy of the book, keep up with the courses you're teaching, and more?
So you can go to writeamustread.com for more info about the book. You can order it wherever books are sold in multiple formats, including audiobook, and you can learn more about me at ajharper.com.
Awesome. Thank you very much, AJ, for being with us today on A Shark's Perspective.
Thanks for having me. It was a blast.
So there was my conversation with AJ Harper, an editor and publishing strategist who helps authors write foundational books, a writing partner to business author Mike Michalowicz, a ghostwriter who has worked with newbies to New York Times bestselling authors with millions of books sold, the head writing coach for Heroic Public Speaking, and the author of Write a Must Read, craft a book that changes lives, including your own. Let's take a look at 3 key takeaways from my conversation with her. First, I seriously feel like I'm getting to cheat by having her on my show as I'm writing my own book. It offers me a lot of great reminders. She reminds us that you can write a must-read book if you make the simple shift to focusing on your reader, not just at the ideation level, but all the way through with making that promise to them. Whether now, in the past, or the future, she focuses on the reader and delivering that promise. Just like what I preach on focusing on the people that we serve. In this case, it's the reader. With the ability for everyone to get a book published, she reminds us that the gates are down, but getting rid of all the publishing standards is not always great. Lots of bad books out there, many that are very forgettable, authors that are forgettable. Don't write that one. Join her on a mission to get better books in the world. It's not easy, just tackle it one page at a time. I'm looking forward to reading your great book. Second, one of my favorite parts is her focusing on delivering the promise. To do that, understand your ideal reader and what they want. Acknowledge that they want the promise, but also that you can deliver this promise in the book and not later on down the road. Move the needle from the start of the book to when it ends. She says that it challenges you to deliver, so you're somewhat forced to up-level on your content or at least bring it down to what you can deliver. Deliver the promise. Third, something I talk to a lot of people about, and I'm curious that way, is I ask people what they read. I asked her about what she likes to read. It's really worth reading something other than what your focus is all the time. If it's Google Analytics, grab some Shakespeare. Or if it's content marketing, grab some Hemingway. If it's advertising, then grab some Toni Morrison. Don't only grab books that are written by other marketing nerds like me if your focus is on marketing. Keep your perspectives fresh and help yourself look at your world a little differently. It may hopefully help you later see things with a new perspective. Got a question? Send me an email to kenneth@asharksperspective.com. Thank you again for the privilege of your time. Please consider writing a review and letting me know your thoughts on the show. And always remember, you can't self-publish a biscuit. Not a clue what that meant, but join us on the next episode of A Shark's Perspective.